A slightly extended cut of this video with longer interview clips and music samples is available on my Patreon. As we all know, anime openings are chemically engineered to be the coolest music possible, whether they take the form of butt rock shonen or DDR reject shoujo. But usually they're in Japanese. And regretfully, every word of that language I know is from anime I watched as a teenager. Senpai, Oppai, and Kokoro are only gonna get me so far on karaoke night.
Should've been poopy.
Luckily, the folks responsible for bringing anime to other countries have had my back for longer than I've been alive. Astro Boy, often cited as the first anime series to hit American airwaves, was also likely the first to give us an English theme song. The original Japanese version of the show, Tetsuwan Atom, used an instrumental opening. Fred Ladd, the man who NBC called in to adapt the show for America, had previous experience bringing European animated films over to the country, often cutting them up for TV broadcast. You could say his career revolved around making foreign animation palatable to those rocking Stars and Stripes. As such, when adapting Astro Boy, he decided this jovial little fanfare needed some words for the kids at home to sing along to. So, Ladd hired a songwriter named Don Rockwell to write some lyrics and got a children's choir to record them.
There you go, Astro Boy.
Apparently, Osamu Tezuka, OG furry artist and creator of Astro Boy, liked it so much that the idea made it back to Japan, with the retroactive addition of a children's choir to their version of the theme song.
When Osamu Tezuka, on a visit to New York, first saw our English version, he was stunned, literally stunned, to hear each program open not with the orchestral version of Takai's theme, but with music and lyrics. He had not expected or even contemplated such a thing. He immediately ordered that Japanese lyrics be written to Takai's melody and had all Tetsuwan Atom shows open with it.
After basically inventing the idea of TV anime having vocal themes, Ladd continued bringing anime over to the States, like Gigantor. The original Japanese series already had a vocal theme, with an orchestral arrangement not dissimilar to Astro Boy. But the American song, written by Lou Singer and Eugene Raskin, was a little different. Apparently, this was commissioned by the American distribution company Translux due to dissatisfaction with the original soundtrack, kicking off a tradition of giving these Japanese imports new music that would, hopefully, resonate more with international audiences. My personal favorite theme for a Ladd project is probably the one for Kimba the White Lion, a localized version of Jungle Emperor Leo. The Japanese theme is basically just a guy with a real deep voice going... Wait, I don't think that's the right song. Shit. There's an alternate version off an old record that adds some lyrics, but it's no banger. Meanwhile, America got a Johnny Little pop tune with cute call and response vocals, telling you all about our title character. This one was written by Bill Giant, Bernie Baum, and Florence Kay, most well known for penning a number of Elvis tunes together.
You're the devil in disguise.
Giant performs the lead vocal, and their songwriting lineage definitely shines through. My socks are hopping. Now, a bit of a tangent, Kimba has kind of a complicated legal history. Mike Toole wrote a great piece about it for Anime News Network that I'm using as a source, but I'll give y'all the cliff notes. Kimba and Astro Boy were licensed to NBC for American broadcast in the 60s, and they eventually passed their stake to another company. By 1978, when the North American broadcasting rights had expired, there was a bit of a legal kerfuffle over who owned Kimba, and the international licensing agent, Fumio Suzuki, tried to capitalize on the confusion by claiming he owned both Astro Boy and Kimba, and licensing them to various American companies. Eventually, in his hubris, Mushi and Tezuka Productions caught up to Suzuki, suing him. Believe it or not, Suzuki somehow thought it would be in his best interest to continue dicking around with the Kimba license while this was going on. He had a new company called Zaza Sound Productions produce their own dub with a new soundtrack, figuring that maybe this would be derivative enough for him to own. Hopefully make a little money off home video, you know? As you can imagine, this didn't go well for Suzuki, especially considering he still used the Kimba name. The lawsuit was settled in 1997, granting all rights for Kimba to Mushi and Tezuka Productions, after which another company, The Right Stuff, re-released the original dub on VHS. They actually had to specifically market it as the 1966 original to avoid confusion with Suzuki's 1993 dub, Kimba the Lion Prince. Okay, so what relevance does this have to dubbed anime openings? Well, astute viewers already caught it. I said this version had a whole new soundtrack, and that means no more malt shop bops.
Kimba, the white lion, he's the bravest little guy in the land.
Yep, this is 1993, alright. You can tell by the stock drum sounds and expired 80s synth. It even has a key change! This one's sung by Yvonne Murray, who voiced Kimba. It was written by frequent collaborator Paul Zaza, the head of Zaza Sound Productions. Jumping back to the 60s, other anime that made their way to America, like Eighth Man and Prince Planet, also used entirely new theme songs, written by dudes like Winston Sharples, who did music for Popeye, Casper, Felix the Cat, and the duo of Guy Hemrick and Jerry Steiner, who wrote music for a bunch of 60s beach movies. Probably the most popular non-Tezuka import from this era was Speed Racer. Its English theme song, like Astro Boy, was a rewritten version of the Japanese one, with new lyrics provided by Peter Fernandez, who also scripted the whole dub and voiced the title character. Dude was apparently churning out new episodes in like 2 days. Shit sounds crazy. The instrumental was re-recorded by Danny Davis and the Nashville Brass, a group of A-list session musicians who became known for their versions of popular country songs. Years later, they even did an album with Willie Nelson, meaning that he's only 2 degrees removed from the English dub of Speed Racer. Despite the success of stuff like Speed Racer and Astro Boy, the 70s would be largely devoid of anime on American shores, with the only notable exceptions being a couple space shows licensed by Sandy Frank Entertainment to cash in on the Star Wars boom. The 80s, however, were a different story. You kids like Jesus? I hope so. Because for some reason, the Christian Broadcasting Network, founded by a famously good person, Pat Robertson,
What is this mac and cheese? Is that a black thing?
It is a black thing, Pat.
aired a lot of anime in the 80s. They even co-produced one called Superbook. 3 guesses on what book it's about. This one got an American theme song that sounds exactly like you'd expect it to, courtesy of Stephen Pepos.
Then I was flying, oh, Superbook.
That's since giving like New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, the musical equivalent of a patchwork quilt lovingly stitched by your grandparents, who you know deep down are probably homophobic. But it's nice if you don't think about it too much. The original Japanese opening was repurposed as the credits theme, which unfortunately means that American kids didn't get to hear this banger. Pepos also did another opening for the show's 2nd season.
Chris and Joy and everyone were having lots of fun. Superbook fell off the shelf. Look what they've done.
CBN also commissioned another Jesus show called The Flying House with a similar tune, although that one's credited to Live Sound Inc. instead of any specific individuals. There's a surprising wealth of other anime on the network too, like the non-religious Honey Honey and Leo the Lion, all with their own original music. But you didn't come here for Jesus. I understand. I didn't start making this video for Jesus either. But don't tell him I said that. Let's talk about something you know. Let's talk about Saban Entertainment. Founder Chaim Saban's first forays into the animation music industry were actually for French dubs of anime like Goldorak. That's not a French accent. France's version of Grendizer. His label, Saban Records, released a 7-inch single of the theme song, penned by Pascal Ariat and Pierre Delanoy, and sung by Noam Kenio, a vocalist Saban had discovered on the streets of Tel Aviv when he was a child. The show and the record were both extremely successful, and this led Saban to think, if he and Shuki Levy, his fellow musician friend and Saban Records co-founder, got into television music production, perhaps they could make their ways into those mysterious cities of gold. That was a reference for all the Saban heads in the crowd. In 1980, they struck a deal with French company Deke Entertainment, offering to produce music for their shows for free, with the stipulation that Saban would retain publishing rights. As we'll talk about more with some later anime, publishing rights for music on television are huge. As Kurt Yoder helpfully explains in an article for Anime News Network that I've been heavily cribbing for the last paragraph or so, in order to air a show internationally, the broadcaster would typically need to attain rights not only for the show itself, but also a separate license for the music. Naturally, this would give Saban and Levy access to a steady income stream, assuming Deke distributed their shows abroad, and you and I both know that they did. Among many, many other shows, some of Levy and Saban's composition credits include Heathcliff, Alf the Animated Series, X-Men, Saturday Supercade, Rainbow Bright, The Real Ghostbusters, Captain N, He-Man, She-Ra, and Inspector Gadget. In 1984, Saban would go into producing television shows themselves, with Thing That Exists Kid Video being their first. The next year, they would add anime adaptations to their resume, with Macron 1, a mix of Takeshi Shudo's mech anime Go Shogun and the very much unrelated Aku Daisakusen Shrungle. And from there, they popped off, dubbing lots of anime that would air on Nickelodeon, yes, Nickelodeon, and other networks. The majority of the music for these projects was credited to Chaim Saban and Shuki Levy. Mapletown, Maya the Bee, Noozles, and Samurai Pizza Cats are just a few examples. Many of these tunes have a very comfy, nostalgic vibe, with those finely aged synths and sweet vocals like a doll commercial.
Mapletown and me.
Welcome to Mapletown, where the animals live just like you.
Come on, Pipe.
Well, for what it's worth, these tunes feel safe and inviting in the way any good preschooler's cartoon should. The vocalists mostly go uncredited, so I guess we'll never know the identities of the Mapletown Children's Choir. Rei The Gei actually has another English dub, which was produced around the same time in South Africa. This version aired in numerous markets like Australia and Hong Kong and features an alternate theme song. Information on this one is a little more sparse, but there's an upload from YouTube user Pinky Lopbun who asked some folks involved about it, so I emailed her for details. Long story short, the vocalist here is South African singer Nick Taylor. One of the folks she'd gotten in contact with was named David Marks, and given the Beach Boys-esque sound of this one, I was wondering if there was some kind of connection to the David Marks from that band, but no, different guy. Either way, while Saban's song is good, I like this one even better.
And if you ask her for her name, she'll say it's Maya.
Back to Saban, the opening for Samurai Pizza Cats was uploaded to YouTube by actor and comedian Michael Arrington, who says he recorded the opening, in his own words, higher than a kite. My first thought was that he was doing sort of a B-52's Fred Schneider thing, but he says in the description that he was actually told to do something more like Paul Lynde.
According to the World Book, what's the main thing we get from Honduras?
You got it too.
I was unfamiliar with Lynde, but upon looking into him, I totally hear it. Lynde was an actor and comedian on all sorts of shows your parents probably watched, like Hollywood Squares and Bewitched. Huge recommendation to Matt Baum's video on Lynde, whose voice also inspired another cartoon.
Great, just cut me that check for $6,800, the budget we agreed upon, and I'll get started.
You might recognize Arrington from voicing London's Mirror on The Sweet Life on Deck, replacing its infamous original voice actor. Arrington actually went on to portray Lynde in a few stage productions, one of which, his play, Off Center, The Paul Lynde Show, actually required him to get the licensing rights for Lynde's name and image from his estate. Oh god, no one tell him about Samurai Pizza Cats. This video is primarily about English language openings, but I'd be remiss not to mention this little gem. This is the Italian opening for Urusei Yatsura, or Lamu. It's a great tune, wholly different from the Japanese original, and you may remember that it was a mystery who wrote or performed it for a number of years. Well, you know Noam Kanyol, the guy Saban discovered as a kid who sang that French anime opening that drove him into the music for animation industry? He confirmed in 2020 that he was one of the vocalists, and we later learned that Shuki Levy was one of the writers. There's gonna be at least one person watching this who just had their mind blown, so you're welcome. It is technically a little dubious how much music Chaim Saban actually wrote. A lawsuit in 1998, brought about by several songwriters, claimed that they'd been paid hourly wages to compose songs that were then attributed to Saban, likely meaning that he'd be the one making royalties off of them. Notably, Ron Wasserman, performer of the original Power Rangers theme, claims to have also written the theme, which is often attributed to just Saban and Levy. Wasserman notably was not involved in the lawsuit and says he holds no ill will towards Saban, however. It's hard to say for sure which songs Saban and Levy were actually behind, although I can say that they, along with Wasserman, were all eventually credited for writing background music for the English dub of Dragon Ball Z. Hey, that sounded like a segue. Speaking of Dragon Ball, a little studio called Harmony Gold dubbed the first few episodes of that way back in the 80s, doing a pretty solid English version of the Japanese opening. Not an exact translation by any means, but serviceable. They changed Goku's name to Zero.
Zero is our
The lyrics are credited to a Catherine Nelligan, but we don't know who sang it. Harmony Gold is perhaps best known for doing Robotech, a hacked-together version of 3 mostly unrelated space anime for American TV, a la Macron 1. See, they needed at least 65 episodes for syndication, and Macross sure didn't have that many when they acquired it. Let's Voltron it together with these other shows. It'll be fine. They also replaced most of the music, including the banger Macross opening, which was swapped for an instrumental tune written by Ulpio Minucci. Minucci was already a pretty established composer in his own right, notably writing the hit Italian song Domani, which was recorded by numerous artists, including Julius La Rosa and Bing Crosby. He was also a 2-time Emmy nominee for his work on the 60s ABC show Saga of Western Man. This new Robotech music ended up getting a vinyl release in America, which Wikipedia claims to be the first ever American album of anime background music. And while this is true as far as I can tell, it's worth noting that there was an Astro Boy record in 1964 that begins with the theme song before presenting the listener with essentially an audio drama. I digress. Some of Harmony Gold's shows, like the similarly cut together Captain Harlock,
I'm the cream of the South,
also take the instrumental approach, but they were no strangers to vocal themes either. In addition to his instrumental work, Minucci also wrote songs for their dub of Minky Momo, renamed The Magical World of Gigi. The lyrics for this were written by Arlan Ober, another Harmony Gold regular, and Jehanna Grama, founder Franka Grama's daughter. She also sang the song and provided the voice of Gigi.
Oh, Gigi,
Incidentally, Gigi was her nickname, so in a way, the dub was named after her. Jaehan is also a really interesting person. She eventually became Harmony Gold's CEO, but perhaps more interestingly, she was also one of the co-founders of GLAAD. You know, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. She was with the company for 11 years, from its founding in 1989 up through 2000, serving as co-president as well as producer of the GLAAD Media Awards. Minky Momo said gay rights? More recently, she founded the company Lemonette, which specializes in making lemon-based salad dressings and marinades. At risk of the impending salad shill allegations, I'm off to the next thing. Can't pin me down. Cascading into the 90s, anime would soon become more popular in the States than ever, partially due to the success of a show called Sailor Moon. After an attempt to turn it into a live-action cartoon hybrid fell apart, Saban's frequent collaborator, Deke, scooped up the license to do a more faithful version.
Oh, great. Why do you think they've entered the contest?
They're girls and cousins, too.
Faithful is a relative term. Deke's 1995 dub of Sailor Moon became an immediate smash hit, flailing aimlessly in syndication so poorly that our phallic friends neglected to renew their license, with the last few episodes of the second season remaining in limbo. At least it was popular in Canada. Deke did actually adapt the original Japanese theme, although the lyrics, written by CEO Andy Hayward, aren't a direct translation at all. The original is about, like, unrequited teenagery love junk, while the English iteration is more of a typical cartoon opening, telling us how cool our school uniform-clad heroine is. We're talking, I'm sorry, it's hard for me to say, although it's easy to say it in my dreams. My thought circuit is about to break down. You know, right now, I want you with me. Versus fighting evil by moonlight, winning love by daylight, never running from a real fight. She is the one called Sailor Moon. Deke's version begins with an ominous electronic sound before going into a cover of the song that, while pretty musically faithful on the whole, misses a few things I appreciate from the original, like a lot of the fun rhythmic drumming and the punchy bass playing. That said, I wouldn't call it bad by any stretch. It's like a proficient karaoke rendition. I do like a few of the new touches though, like the ominous final chord, the shouting of all the Sailor Scout names, and the nicely harmonized guitar solo. They give the adaptation a lot of its own character. Bob Summers, who arranged the theme song under the company Don Perry Music, also rescored the show with way too many versions of the Moonlight Densetsu melody cropping up as a motif.
But I got a call from a gal named Karen Ullman, who I had worked with. She worked with Hanna-Barbera and Taft Entertainment, and we had done a couple of syndicated series. And she called me and said, we have this anime project we picked up from Japan. It's a big series there, and we're doing a version for the U.S., but we have to change the music, update the music. I'd never heard of it. At that point, I don't think anybody here had heard of it. But there were like 40 episodes, and there was no way that we could score individually 40 episodes and get it on the air on their time span. So what we did was what I had done with a lot of other series. What happens in a series is there are little 30-second segues. There are little pieces of the theme that you use over and over again. So as we were doing that, I would catalog those and develop them. I'd do action cues, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, fight cues, chase scenes, romantic, tender. I just categorized them so that I could get to them easily if we had to rely on something out of a library. So we approached Sailor Moon the same way. We looked at the first project. What took the longest was redoing the main theme, but we did the theme happy, sad, chase, tension, just different moods of the theme. And then we did other things based on the first things we had seen. We turned them over to the music editor, hoping we had enough for them to find those cues that we labeled and put them under the action. It worked out better than we thought. I think they used parts of that for 120 episodes. But we didn't actually score it to the picture. We did it as a library to fit what we thought would work, and we nailed it.
The theme was sung by Nicole and Bryn Price, who were 14 and 11 at the time, respectively. The Prices were the daughters of George Smitty Price, a musician and sound engineer who met Summers and Perry while learning sound engineering under his music teacher, Marlon Jones. Price's piano playing and music reading ability ended up being useful for Summers, who couldn't read sheet music. After George Price worked with Bob Summers and Don Perry for a number of years, his daughters tracked the vocal for a demo of the Sailor tune, and they ended up using that for the final take. Oh yeah, they also made CDs? 90s. In spite of what you may initially assume, Sailor Moon, songs from the hit TV series, does actually live up to its name, with each of its 11 tracks turning up in the show in some form. So much so that Sailor Moon had her own dedicated singing voice provided by another person, Jennifer Seehee. I am not joking. These turn up all over Deke's dub, replacing some background music and image songs from the original. They run the gamut from butt rock to country-twinged power pop to borderline EDM. The one I'd like to highlight, however, isn't from this album, but from the follow-up, Luna Rock, which has a nice low-res screenshot of the anime on its cover.
Wanna hold your hand, boy.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something. I think you'll understand when I say that something. I wanna hold your hand.
How the hell did this get greenlit? To be clear, I love it. I think it's great. But who had the idea, and what legal channels did they have to scrounge through to make it a reality? It boggles the mind. This masterpiece never appears in the show, I imagine because it would have been a licensing nightmare. But the fact it even made it to the album is nothing short of astounding. Anyway, let's check back on our friends at Harmony Gold, no doubt riding the highs of Dragon Ball's success. Oh goodness, my. So they only dubbed the first 5 episodes and cobbled together a TV special from 2 of the movies, airing them in test markets before deciding it wasn't worth pursuing further and letting the license lapse. A few years later, one Gen Fukunaga, a Japanese-American businessman, was approached by his uncle, Nagafumi Hori, a producer at Toei. He said, "Hey, Gen, my man, do you want to found an entire company literally just so I can give you Dragon Ball?" Fukunaga, charmed by Hori's casual tone and suave demeanor, did just that, founding literally Funimation. And then Toei said, "No, you can't have Dragon Ball initially," until Hori eventually helped persuade them. Fukunaga approached his college buddy, Daniel Kokenhauer, to help with the funding, and his family sold their feed mill in order to invest. They had complete faith in little Goku. Funimation didn't yet have their own dubbing team, so they partnered with BLT Productions in Vancouver to produce their dub with completely new music by Peter Baring. This included a new theme song, which I guess you could say is updated for 1995.
Keep on searching, but beware. Goku is gonna show you.
Is this like their version of Zero is Our Hero? Do all of them need to rhyme the protagonist's name with something? The lyrics for this one are credited to Brian Griffith, with the performance being done by David Steele. Given the show's Canadian production, this Brian Griffith might be Brian Lee Griffith, a guitarist from Hamilton, Ontario, who played with numerous musicians over the course of his life, again including Willie Nelson. He could have been a weeb! Meanwhile, David Steele doesn't appear to be this David Steele who was in Fine Young Cannibals, but instead this David Steele, who's sung in a couple bands of his own and done quite a bit of session work, notably backup vocals from Motley Crue, David Lee Roth, and Raffi. Don't look him up. Baring's new score actually got an official CD release, so if you're a collector of weird, esoteric Dragon Ball merch, please purchase this at a reasonable price and don't drive the cost up. I don't want people to yell at me. The show aired in syndication and, according to a few secondhand sources, seemed to have trouble securing good time slots, so it failed to make waves and was canned after only 13 episodes. So, the company decided to skip ahead to Dragon Ball Z in '96, figuring its more action-oriented nature might be a better fit for the US market. This time, they partnered with Ocean Studios, another Canadian company, to produce the dub, rehiring many of the voice actors from their original Dragon Ball dub. For distribution, they partnered with our buddies? Let's not get too familiar. From Saban to help get the show syndicated. More acquaintances, really. Saban's music department was also responsible for the iconic Rock the Dragon opening, which replaced Sha La Head Shala. I love this quote from Cindy Fukunaga, Gen's wife, where she's asked if they retain the Japanese theme, and she says,
"No, we composed a new theme. It was done in Los Angeles. It's a very distinctive sound, and I'm told it's of the sort that's very popular among American children right now."
You think Saban told her that? Yeah, we did Power Rangers. Kids love that. There's been a bit of a mystery over the years regarding who actually wrote Rock the Dragon, though. The credits for the original airings of the dub credit it to Shuki Levy and
Kasamachi,
with Kasamachi thought to be an alias for Haim Saban. As we know, though, allegedly in Minecraft, these two are, maybe not the most trustworthy people ever, allegedly, perhaps, possibly, according to some sources. Rock the Dragon is instead commonly attributed by fans to the aforementioned Ron Wasserman. It does make sense. He was one of the people to do music for the dub, and they'd already cucked him out of credit for his work on Power Rangers, though Wasserman has denied his involvement with the song whenever asked by fans, as well as in an interview with the Dutch Gamers. The other prevailing theory is that it was done by Jeremy Sweet, who is also credited on the dub. I don't think Sweet has ever commented on it, so we might never know for sure, but I think this theory holds a good amount of weight. Side note, Sweet is often credited online for singing the tune, but I can't find a source on that either. You know what Sweet did do? Yeah, for the initial airings of Naruto on Toonami, the mid-tempo 80s-y opening Rocks was swapped for this shorter, more intense tune that anyone my age would recognize. I didn't actually realize this was Naruto until working on this video. I associate it with Newgrounds. This opening would be retained even in 2012 when the series was aired uncut, although it was replaced with a shorter version of Rocks when it came back in 2024. Jeremy Sweet is credited as one of 2 performers on this, along with Ian Nickus. Anyway, we're time hopping too much. Back to Dragon Ball Z. Dub was apparently cut short after 2 seasons, despite apparently being a rating success. We'll never hear from these Funimation jokers ever again. Ocean's sister studio, Blue Water, also did their own dub of the original Dragon Ball for Canadian TV, which randomly features an English version of the French theme song. I don't know, man, this Goku shit's confusing. Okay, this is a guess, but I have a sneaking suspicion that some of you might like Pokemon a normal amount. Like me. And anyone who knows Pokemon knows this tune. Although, in Japan, you might associate another song with the franchise. Now, the localization of early Pokemon could be a 10-part series on its own, so I'll keep the non-song stuff simple. The first Pokemon games came out in Japan in 1996. Sales started slow before they gradually became the best-selling games of 1997 in the country, eclipsing even Final Fantasy VII. It may have helped that someone, at some point, said, "Hey, we should make a cartoon." Well, actually, they said, "Ne, anime sukaroyo." Despite Porygon-related controversies, Pokemon, the game, anime, trading cards, manga, plushes, and presumably Windows 95 CD-ROMs, that was all a big success in Japan. So naturally, Nintendo of America, hoping its yen printing abilities could translate to US dollar printing ones, brought it over. They took one look at Pokemon Red and Green in all their glory and said, "Hey, what about this blue version you made?" American children hate green. It'll make them cry. You know what else will make American children cry? Trumpets. Make sure there's no trumpet. Oh, someone's getting fired. A company called 4Kids got a hold of this Pokemon show for dubbing and distribution. They'd already had a relationship with Nintendo, creating various products for them in the late 80s, when the company's name was Leisure Concepts Incorporated, so that probably helped. 4Kids had never dubbed an anime before, so CEO Norman Grossfeld had to assemble a team. He called up his friend Michael Hagney, who'd been working at a studio called Taj Productions on an anime called Slayers, which, by the way, did not get a dubbed opening. I checked. Hagney ended up bringing a couple Slayers voice actors with him too. Grossfeld also wanted new music. Pokemon's dub, much like Sailor Moon's, is infamous for replacing a lot of the Japanese soundtrack, which some involved have clarified was largely due to residuals.
The concept was that we were going to keep certain basic parts of the original Japanese music, and we were going to replace as much of the rest of it as we could. And it was purely, well, I won't say purely. It was a business decision. The music was an income source, and it was an important income source because it helped to pay for the whole production.
What I tell you, music publishing rights on television are a big deal.
Noi siamo sempre pronti a tutto.
The English dub for Pokemon is actually the basis for a lot of its international dubs, often keeping the 4Kids soundtrack, so like Saban, they presumably earned a pretty penny off their music. For the theme song though, Grossfeld had another motive: marketing. The Japanese intro, aimed to be a Pokemon master, is great. You know the shot in the opening where Pikachu runs underneath this gal? There's actually a lyric about that, accompanied by an embarrassed anime shriek. 4Kids, however, was marketing Pokemon towards American children. Instead of a straight translation, Grossfeld wanted an attention-grabbing new tune, ensuring that Pikachu could dig his way into people's brains. Pikachu couldn't learn that move in Gen 1, but 4Kids had Game Shark, so it was okay. Enter Rave Music, a production company specializing in advertising jingles and TV themes. Rave's CEO was songwriter John Loeffler, who got into the jingle business in his 20s, and they employed a variety of other talented New York musicians.
I played tennis with a guy who said that he was a director, and he asked me what I did. I said, well, I'm trying to be a songwriter. He said, well, then you should come up to my company and see some of my work. So I thought I would be seeing film, motion pictures, and he proceeded to show me a reel of TV commercials. Turns out he, at the age of 30, was one of the leading TV commercial directors, and he mentored me and basically introduced me to a company that hired me to start doing music for TV commercials. I was about 24, 25, and for the next 15 years, actually, I was one of the 20, 30 people that did a lot of commercials. That led to my having Rave, a production company that could not only help with the commercials, but also was available to do other things. And I had 5 or 6 other composers, and it was a blast. And everybody was just working on any project that would come in across our desk. About this period of time, I started doing some television work, and I did a TV sitcom called Kate and Allie. And it was a different economic model because when you do commercials, you basically got paid more if you sang on it. And since I am a singer, it worked well. You would get residuals. But in TV work, you get royalties based on performance of a show. And Kate and Allie ended up running for 8 or 10 years. That week of composing for that series made a pretty good penny. Started developing relationships with TV producers. And this young, inspiring guy named Norman Grossfeld. So we have this cartoon show, and there's no money. We got it from Japan, and we're going to basically reposition the show with a Western angle rather than a Japanese angle, and there might be an opportunity to do some music. And I just said, sure.
While we're talking backstories, another John Siegler, had previously worked as a session bassist for a number of artists, including Roger Daltrey, Yoko Ono, and Hall & Oates. He is also notably a member of Todd Rundgren's band Utopia. After growing older and getting married, Siegler decided that the touring life was no longer for him, and he wanted something a little more 9 to 5-ish.
By the time I was in Hall & Oates, I was married. My wife was pregnant with our first child, and it was a difficult pregnancy, and I had to come home. They went off to Japan. I told them I couldn't go. They got a sub for me to go to Japan. They came back. I went back in the band for a while, and I realized, no, this is not the life I want. What we wanted to be, what I wanted to be particularly, was a New York studio musician, which is where I was. And thanks to Todd, a lot of it had to do with Todd, but not just Todd. I was playing on sessions all that time. You know, if I was in town, I was playing on sessions. Yeah. The biggest part of the business was the jingle business, and that's what everybody wanted to do. And those sessions started at 10 a.m. It was more important to be sitting in your chair at 10 a.m. and ready to play if you were really a good player or not. John Leffler had a jingle house with my best friend, Ralph Schuckett, who was a member of Utopia at the time, but had also left to become an arranger/studio musician in New York City. And that's how I met John. And then eventually my buddy Ralph, he's from LA and he moved back to LA. And at that point, I took over Ralph's chair with John Leffler, and we continued in the jingle business. At that point, I stopped playing on other people's sessions.
These two would be responsible for writing the now legendary Pokémon theme. It was always LilOrangeFella's mentality not to play down to children by writing condescending music. Rather, the goal was to write modern-sounding pop that was good on its own merits. To hear Siegler tell it on the 4Kids Flashback podcast, LilOrangeFella essentially gave him a launching pad for the song. They then wrote the lyrics together, the idea being to write from the perspective of Ash himself. That draft ended up very close to the final version, but Grossfeld wanted one extra ingredient. As he explained to Huffington Post in 2017,
"It was always my intention to come up with a tagline for marketing purposes that would also be included in the theme song. Catch 'Em If You Can was one of the original contenders and did make its way into an early version."
This "Catch 'Em If You Can" slogan was featured in a few early press kits, appearing in a familiar font. According to Siegler, the late edition of Gotta Catch 'Em All was the biggest change made to the song from its original incarnation. Notably, a song called "Catch 'Em If You Can" did end up on the first movie's soundtrack, though I'm unsure if that was a coincidence or a deliberate reference to the abandoned tagline. Siegler played most of the instruments on the theme, but according to the To Be a Master album, David Rolfe plays guitar along with Larry Saltzman. The two Johns auditioned several vocalists before landing on Jason Page. He's into crypto now. No, but really, Page also worked in the New York jingle industry and went on to perform with a number of famous musicians. You can hear him in this video rapping for Michael Jackson. Like pretty much everyone, Page was unfamiliar with the show beyond the Porygon incident, but knocked out an undeniably iconic performance regardless. Pokémon went on to become really popular. You may have heard of it. Page said he was paid a 3-figure salary for the session without residuals, though he was promised more pay for working on the To Be a Master album that was put into production after the show became a runaway success. By the way, the extended version was done specifically for that album. The original recording ends where it would on TV. Pokémon's success naturally led to a lot of merchandise, some of which Page claims used his voice without permission. In his own words,
"Between the TV show and the completion of the album, there was a myriad of other products that came up as well that started using little sound bites of the song. How do you determine what the compensation should be for a sound bite coming off of a plastic watch?" or a little pinball machine, or a room greeter in a Blockbuster video store.
Between Nintendo, 4Kids, and the Pokémon Company, a lot of corporate partners were getting money through use of the song, and while Siegler and Loeffler's agreement for writing it was apparently rather generous, Page found it frustrating that his initial agreement did not entitle him to royalties, suing 7 companies for use of his voice, according to Billboard. He did eventually settle for a flat fee of somewhere under $100,000, much less than he feels his role was worth. Incidentally, Billboard doesn't list the companies, but I'm gonna say Nintendo, 4Kids, Game Freak, the Pokemon Company, Tiger, who made the pinball machine, Trendmasters, who made the watch and the room greeter, and 2 others. You're welcome to go check that for me. Let me know what I win if I got them right. For his part, Page doesn't seem to hold any ill will towards anyone.
Everybody did everything so right that it exploded before they had even structures in place to compensate people for what was going on. There was no standard to monetize this thing that was in Blockbuster Video. There was no standard to monetize, an ice skating show that was doing this song. There was no standard to monetize the radio play on Radio Disney. Nope. The videotapes got produced and sent out everywhere. So there's no monetization on that distribution either. There was only the monetization of the first song and then a record contract for the full version and Viridian City, those 2 songs. And because they didn't have the structures to pay for those things, I don't fault them for that. There's no way to figure that out. It's better to just have a one-time payment. Everybody did everything so right that all of these things happen. Instead of the narrative being everybody did everything so wrong to mess everybody up, to take advantage of everybody. Right. No, everybody was just doing what was right for the entirety of the product. Yeah. And we know that now in retrospect, but when you're hearing all of these things and you're hearing your voice everywhere that you weren't compensated for, it feels different. It feels like you've been abused. I had animosity for a while, but now I completely understand that, that the benefit of moving forward and really there's no malintent.
Regardless, the song is now a pop culture fixture. I watched Jeff Rosenstock walk on stage to it, people sing it at karaoke, and the franchise itself has reused it many times, albeit usually without Page's iconic vocal. Some of you already knew all this, so I'm gonna throw you a few miscellaneous bits of trivia. Did you know? In 2019, Twitter user Helix Chamber pointed out that an early version of the song with a different vocalist can be briefly heard in an episode of the Mexican show Nintendo Mania.
I want to be the very best.
The vocalist's identity remains unknown. Hey, it's your old buddy Editing John with another addendum, baby. I'm high on life. I got a hot tip from Discord member Chris. Thank you, Chris. The Video Game History Foundation recently released a set of old E3 material, and amongst this material is a video of Nintendo showing off Pokémon to Americans at E3 1998 before the franchise launched in the West. Not only does this clip contain more high-quality clips of this early theme song, but it does confirm that in place of "Gotta Catch 'Em All," we can hear the original slogan, "Catch 'em if you can." Because so many international dubs of the show were based on the 4Kids version rather than the Japanese original, this opening has also made its way to many other countries and many other languages. Notable exceptions include the Cantonese and Korean dubs, which instead use original songs. The Cantonese dub would eventually do their own version of the Japanese tune, albeit with a redone backing track. There are a few interesting cases where an international dub will use both the Japanese and English opening, typically one for the movies and one for the show. For example, the Thai dub retains the original Japanese version of Aim to be a Pokemon Master for the show, while Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution instead translates that film's version of the English theme. Oh god, guys, I don't know how to tell you this. Researching international dubs in languages you don't speak is actually really, really hard. So Bulbapedia told me on its page list of Thai Pokemon themes that for Thailand's dub of the original series, which was done in the early 2000s, and apparently, according to another Bulbapedia page, was not that successful, so there's a big gap between them dubbing that and them continuing to dub. They said for the dub of the original series, they retained the Japanese opening, but I did some cursory YouTube searching, and there actually appears to be an original Thai opening for the original series. Now, the Thai dub, since then, the current current incarnation generally uses either its own original themes or occasionally music from the Korean dub. Now, Bulbapedia does say that Journeys also uses the Japanese opening, but frankly, I don't know what to think anymore. This has exploded beyond the scope of this video, and I'm tired. What I will tell you, however, is that because the Thai dub of the original series has its own unique opening, the English theme being dubbed for Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution is still an anomaly. Believe it or not, Japanese audiences likely have a bit of familiarity with the English theme as well. For one, it was used in Pokémon de English, a series of segments designed to teach Japanese viewers, well, English. That deserves a video on its own someday, so that's all I'm gonna say on it. Remember the bit in Detective Pikachu where he sings the Pokemon theme?
Pokemon.
In Japan, it's not only retained, but properly translated into Japanese. In 2023, a mashup of Aim to be a Pokemon Master with the English theme, done by Night Tempo, was uploaded to both the Japanese and English Pokemon YouTube channels. While the original vocal track of Aim is retained, the English vocals seem to be re-recorded by someone other than Paige. Finally, did you also know that some episodes initially aired with a shortened version of the song? This would have gotten me to believe the Mandela effect was real as a kid, so I'm glad I've never been caught off guard. Anyways, Siegler was content with his work on that first opening, but the powers that be, I assume Nintendo, wanted 4Kids to continually update it with each new season. The next opening, however, didn't tie into any new game release. Given the number of unique openings Pokemon has, I'm not going to be able to cover all of them in depth, but I'll touch on the first few a little bit, since they're often overshadowed by the original. The show's second English theme, Pokemon World, was used during the Orange Islands arc, and it goes hard. If one was really high, it wouldn't be hard to mistake the beat for Cypress Hill. Is Pokemon World good to get stoned to? Let me know, weed community. World was also written by Loeffler and Siegler, although instead of Jason Page, we have Russell Velasquez on vocals. It also introduces the proud tradition of attempting to replicate the original magic by having the backing vocals randomly add the word Pokemon in places it may not otherwise go. Here, Russ, as his own point man, throws it into the background of the verse, which makes me grin every time. Pokemon! This one understandably hasn't been referenced or reused as much as the original, but it did get this sick nod in Pokemon Path to the Peak, a mini-series focusing on the card game from 2023. It even turned up in the Japanese dub with new translated vocals. Maybe the most iconic intro beyond the original is Pokemon Johto, sung by PJ Laquaria, one of the members of the Pokemon pop group Johto. Listen, another story for another day. If you're familiar with the Totally Pokemon CD, that's them. The backing vocals are provided by the rest of Johto, and that ironclad do-do-do-do-do-do hook really brings it all together. I can't help but feel like this tune would sort of set the pattern for the remaining 4Kids openings in terms of its sound. It's rock, but in a way that lacks a little of the 90s edge and intensity of the original. It's a chilled, feel-good thing, still with some of the aspiration towards Ash's greater goals. Maybe that lack of intensity has something to do with the original being in minor, while the newer ones are generally in major. I don't know, I'm probably overthinking it. I should also note that the first 3 openings had unique versions made for the movies, arranged by more New York talent, like session musician Neil Jason and guitarist Jeff Golub. Because of Jason's extensive session work, we now have a direct through line from John Lennon and Paul McCartney to Pokemon, and I don't know how that makes me feel. I really enjoy how these new arrangements try for their own sound, veering in a dancier direction, and I'm an especially big fan of the hard-hitting new Pokemon Johto arrangement, still featuring the beloved pop group. After the first few intros, 4Kids would settle into a groove, with each subsequent opening written by Siegler, with additional writing and vocals by David Rolfe, who you'll remember played guitar on the original. After the dub switched hands to the Pokemon Company with Battle Frontier, Loeffler would get a chance to pen a few more songs with co-writer David Wolfort, working with various vocalists all the way up through X and Y, where, after arranging a redone version of the original theme, composer Ed Goldfarb would take over, working on the show to this day. After Pokemon's success, 4Kids ended up dubbing a lot more anime. Let's hit some highlights.
It's time to do.
The original Yu-Gi-Oh opening's kind of weird, being mostly instrumental save for some clips of Dan Green and some sparse vocals from Rolfe. Big fan of the tasteful vocal effects. The The song was written by Siegler along with composer Wayne Sharp, who wrote the show's title like this on his website. There's a few different iterations of this one for later seasons, and you can hear the full version on the Music to Duel By album. Yes, they made a CD for Yu-Gi-Oh! No, it did not sell as well as the Pokemon ones. There's also a weird tune called Your Move that showed up to bridge the initial airings of 2 episodes together via montage. It sounds a lot more like a regular 4Kids theme song, and I bring it up because it actually interpolates the bass line from the opening. You can also find this one on Music to Duel By, or, if you're a real fan, on one of these CD-ROMs that came with McDonald's Mighty Kids meals for a limited time. Future Yu-Gi-Oh! Openings take on more of a pop-punk flavor, which is also cool, but it just doesn't hit like that drop in the original.
It's time to duel!
I am a fan of GX's theme though, very nostalgic and pretty reminiscent of the later Pokemon stuff. Shout out to Generation X. This one's lyrics were written by Matthew Durdak, a 4Kids scriptwriter and namesake of this Yu-Gi-Oh! Card, with music by Alex Walker and Jake Siegler, 2 members of the 4Kids house band, the 4Kids 5. Yeah, 4Kids had a house band. Stop asking stupid questions.
Watch out for Sonic X!
If the name Jake Siegler sounds familiar, it's because he's the son of John Siegler, and he's become a professional bassist and composer in his own right. The lead vocal was done by Lucas Papelius, another member of the band. According to a 4Kids flashback interview, Durdak remembers writing the lyric and passing it off to John Siegler, who may have let his son's band work on it. I emailed Jake Siegler, who told me that he'd been playing music since he was 8, starting with cello. He grew up with the guitarist and drummer of the 4Kids 5, playing in various different bands. Siegler still works as a composer, with his 4Kids work helping him land a job on a show called Par. The 4Kids 5 filmed a number of promotional videos for the Foxbox where they performed various 4Kids classics, and the individual members occasionally contributed to proper theme songs themselves. The female lead vocalist, Molly Weaver, was one of 3 ladies who sang on the magical Do Re Mi theme song, for example, along with voice actress Lindsay Warner and Johto member Ilan Rivera. Their harmonies work real well. For some reason, the first comparison I can think of with the groove on this is like the Jackson 5. Don't know if that's what they were going for, but it's fun either way. Not a lot of info on Warner out there after 4Kids, but Rivera and Weaver are both still pretty active in music. I wasn't originally going to talk about the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's theme song, but did you know? This wasn't the only theme song 4Kids made for this show. I seem to recall hearing Russ Velasquez or John Siegler talking about how they'd have different writers all try to write theme songs for some shows before picking just one as the final choice. For 5D's though, it was left up to the fans. Yes, in 2008, you could log into 4kids.tv, listen to 8 different songs, and vote for your favorite. The one they went with, Hyperdrive, is one of the better ones, but it's really interesting to lay all the cards on the table. Metaphorically, I don't play Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't know a lot about 5Ds beyond the old card games on motorcycles bit, but Hyperdrive seems to have lyrics written from the perspective of our protagonist. What's his name? Yusei? Sure, this makes sense. GX, as well as most of the Pokemon openings, employ a similar technique. But this wasn't the only kind of opening 4Kids did. Remember, the 4Kids mentality was to make ear-catching songs that would excite children, and they employed quite a few former jingle writers. I'm saying a lot of these sound like toy commercials. I don't know if I'm into the whole name-dropping the characters and directly explaining the show to the audience thing in the context of Yu-Gi-Oh! It does feel like I'm being advertised to, which I am, but I don't want to be aware of it. I don't think we actually know who wrote or sang any of these other than Hyperdrive, so no idea who to blame. But I do want to draw special attention to Gotta Be Better Than Best, which seems like it's written from the perspective of antagonist Jack Atlas.
You gotta be better than best.
Anything less, you're out of your league.
The difference between trying and winning.
One's for losers, but number 1's for me.
Not sure why that happened, but I admire the different direction. Even musically, it's something alright. Spoken word with like soulful backing vocals. This song would work well tucked away on a CD, but they sure as hell weren't going to be making and selling a 5D CD. I don't have it in me to fully articulate the downfall of the 4Kids empire in this video, but suffice it to say that Yu-Gi-Oh! Continues to be dubbed by what's left of them, with the crusty 2000s pop-punk sound remaining a trademark of the dub openings to this day. Special shout out to Arc 5 for adding a rap verse to this formula. How inspired. Sonic X isn't very good, but the song is. True Blue, the best of Sonic the Hedgehog, credits the theme, sometimes called Gotta Go Fast, to Russ Velasquez, Norman Grossfeld, and Joseph Garrity. Velasquez talked a bit about the song on 4Kids Flashback, saying that anime marketer extraordinaire Norman Grossfeld gave him the phrase, gotta go fast, as well as the rest of the lyrics. Although the repetition of faster, 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 that's hard to do that fast, was Russ's idea. This song captures a good amount of the sort of Crush 40 essence that defined Sonic at the time, while translating it into the 4Kids style. The booklet for True Blue, one of the only commercial releases of the song, doesn't actually credit a vocalist. Is it Velasquez himself? I don't know, man, you figure it out. I've been working on this video for like a year. I can't do everything for you. You gotta learn to do a little research yourself. And stand up straight. And eat your vegetable. The phrase gotta go fast has become pretty deeply associated with Sonic since this opening first came onto the scene. It's been referenced in the movies, Sonic Boom, various crossover games, and even in Sonic Origins as a mission name. And I think that's pretty cool. This is one of the all-timers. Shout out to Garrity and Grossfeld on this one, along with Ralph Schuckett, a friend of Siegler's. The two were founding members of Todd Rundgren's band Utopia. Schuckett was something of a prodigy, playing with Carole King and Elvis Presley from a young age. LilOrangeFella referred to him as brilliant in a 2020 interview. Schuckett got roped into the 4Kids dynasty with Pokémon the First movie, which he rescored for the Western market. He had already moved back to LA by the time 4Kids did Kirby, however, so he was in the unique position of working remotely rather than with the rest of the music department. I assume Norman gets a credit here, having written some or all of the lyrics, as he often did. Someone not credited, however, is the vocalist. Siegler says in an episode of 4Kids Flashback that it's likely Schuckett hired and paid the vocalist for the session himself, and as such, he'd be the only one who knew their identity. Unfortunately, Ralph Schuckett passed away in 2021 before anyone had thought to ask him, and now the singer of this iconic song is a mystery. If you have any leads, why are you watching this? Go tell the podcast people, shoo, and brush your teeth! It's wild to think about this song in particular having such a big mystery associated with it, because like Sonic, it was pretty closely tied to Kirby's brand for a while, notably showing up in the North American versions of Donkey Konga and Kirby's Dream Collection. The URL for Kirby's official American website for nearly a decade was also kirby.com in reference to the song. Dude, we could do 4Kids all day. You've got the tasty power pop of Mew Mew Power, sung by Bree Sharp. Love this Velvet Crush ass bass lick in the opening. Or how about Ultimate Muscle, the only opening in this video to use horns to mimic a fart. Really fun gang vocals in here. Pretty sure I hear Eric Stewart. 4Kids is really great. It's a— oh shit, that Funimation company's back! And this time, they mean business. From what I can gather, Toonami picked up their dub of Dragon Ball Z for reruns around the time it was dropped by Funimation's distributor, Pioneer. This time slot helped it pick up popularity, and Funny decided to continue where they'd left off, this time without Ocean, using their own voice actors. Initially, they continued using Saban's Rock the Dragon opening, even using it in the English version of Dragon Ball Z Budokai for the PS2. The score, however, changed hands from Ron Wasserman to Bruce Faulkner. Oh hey, it's your old friend editing, John. How are you? You look good. Bruce Faulkner composing all of the new Dragon Ball Z score is actually a common misconception. As Totally Not Mark explains in this YouTube short, that idea comes from most of the CD releases of this score crediting Faulkner as primary composer. A lot of these tracks were actually composed by Mike Smith, Julius Dobos, and Scott Morgan. Little bit of a Tallarico scenario, from my understanding, although I don't know a lot to throw Faulkner quite as much under that bus, but I don't know. I'm not adding this editor's note to throw anyone under the bus. I'm adding this editor's note to note that Mike Smith, Scott Morgan, and Julius Dobos also deserve their flowers. Thank you to A2 Adam for pointing this out to me. They have helped quite a bit with the Dragon Ball stuff in this video. I don't know a lot. I've seen the first arc as of time of recording. Thank you, AJ, for watching it with me. Okay, anyway. Eventually, Faulkner would compose a new instrumental theme for the show with similarly edgy rock vibes. The sort that's very popular among American children right now. Turbo dorks like me might remember it better from Super Mario Bros. Z. The version on Crunchyroll, made for the uncut dub, uses yet another instrumental theme, this time by Dave Morin. When Funimation eventually redubbed the first 67 episodes that had originally been done by Ocean, they had the score redone by another composer, Nathan Johnson, who is currently a Texas senator. Hope he's one of the good ones. There are notably a couple English versions of the original Japanese opening, Cha-La Head Cha-La, one being for the Creative Projects Corporation dub, produced for the Philippines. I don't really know a whole lot about Cha-La Head Cha-La being used in English versions of Z outside of this, but luckily my good friend AJ has a degree in DragonBallology and happens to be giving a lecture on this very topic right now. Let's sneak in and see what we can learn.
So while Funimation never actually bothered to use Chala Hechala as the opening for any of its dub releases, the song did get to appear elsewhere throughout the franchise. It was used as the opening song for both Ultimate Tenkaichi and Kakarot. An instrumental arrangement was used as the credits theme for Budokai. When Battle of Gods released, they got Flow to record their own cover that was used in the movie, Battle of Z, Xenoverse, Fighters, Xenoverse 2, Super Dragon Ball Heroes, probably like 15 other mobile games I don't know about. The beginning of Super Broly has a really cool arrangement. The dub for Super has a gag where Goku sings it. This will be on the test!
Hey, you know what Dragon Ball fans really don't like?
Step into the Grand Tour. Step into the Grand Tour. Dragon Ball GT.
I think they're just being haters. This is fire. Funimation's GT opening was composed by Mark Mensa, who also scored the rest of the dub and worked on Jimmy Neutron, baby! Hell yeah! The rapping was done by Marcus Hall, aka Shorty the Man. Though Mensa had remembered Barry Watson writing the lyrics in an interview with the Tao of Dragon Ball, Hall explains that he got the gig through Ty Robison, an engineer he worked with at January Sound Studios. Hall was already familiar with Dragon Ball Z, so he jumped at the chance. Mensa gave him a rough backing track and a list of elements from the show to highlight, and was so impressed with what he came back with the next week that they recorded the theme that night. According to Hall, the gang vocals chanting the show's title are him, Mark, some musicians who'd worked on the song, his friend Cedric, and some graphic designers from down the hall. The original Japanese opening did eventually get an English version done for the 2008 and 2009 DVDs. GT also had a separate dub done in Canada for international distribution, with a version of this tune that rewrote the lyrics to be more of a plot summary. Can't find the name of the guy who sings this, but it does sound to me like the same person who sang the Blue Water opening for the original Dragon Ball, so make of that what you will. The success of Dragon Ball helped Funimation grow, and they soon started bringing other anime stateside, some of which also received English openings. A lot of these shows would use faithful translations of the Japanese themes, and for this, they'd be bringing in some new talent. Enter Carl Finch, a prolific musician with too many credits to list, the most notable being his polka group, Brave Combo. Formed in 1979 and still active to this day. I got the chance to talk to Carl about a lot of things, including how he became interested in polka and how that eventually led to him working with Funimation.
My name is Carl Finch. I live in Denton, Texas, and I lead a band called Brave Combo, and have been doing that for over 4 decades. But I do a lot of side projects. Before Brave Combo, I did audio installations, which involved a lot of different kinds of speakers. And one of the main things I worked with were drive-in theater speakers, old drive-in theater speakers. And I found a place in Kansas City where I could buy a bunch of these things. So I bought a bunch of these speakers. You're too young to remember going to the drive-in, but it was a pretty regular thing for me, you know, and you drive up and you go up to the thing and you pull that speaker into your car and turn it up. And so I always associated those speakers with kind of background music. And the main thing I liked about it was with the intermission. Like the movie was okay, but I looked forward to the intermission between the movies because they would have these bizarre graphics of hot dogs jumping into hot dog buns and dancing ice cream and stuff. I got obsessed with that period of time, not the whole, like people are going to see the movies. I got obsessed with all this peripheral stuff. And I started thinking about how that peripheral stuff affects people subliminally. Then I started thinking about background music in general. Then I started thinking about the difference between muzak and background music. Background music is just wallpaper, let's say.
Right.
Muzak is designed to manipulate the listener 100%. It's active. Background music is passive. So Muzak is a company that I think started in Seattle, and they got businesses to subscribe to their service where they figured out a formula using the elements of music to motivate workers during the lulls of the day. So they figured if they use certain musical elements, let's say in the mid-morning, mid-afternoon, when most workers start to crater, that they could use the music to motivate the people at work. So that really got me thinking. So this whole idea of background music and muzak. Then I started thinking, well, what's the difference between any music? Like all music's the same. It does, like you don't have to categorize anything. You don't have to say this works here and this works here. And then that led me to polkas. So this polka music thing really interested me because I did not grow up around it at all.
Right.
In Northeast Texas with no polka awareness at all. I just walked into a store one day and there was a bunch of boxes of polka albums, cutouts, really cheap. It's like $1 each for all these polka records, but I didn't know anything about it. But I was already primed through the work I'd done trying to figure out what motivates people and the music that they listen to. So I was primed to be sucked in by this. So I just bought like 50 of these albums. And then over a period of time, I found myself pretty drawn to it. Polka has been the most maligned, beaten down, abused music that there is. And that's all tied, once again, to immigration and prejudices toward immigration. You know, the Eastern Europeans came to the East Coast and the people here didn't like them. And they didn't like this goofy music they brought with them. And so the polka music became associated with dorkiness. Really thinking about why polka music was like the bottom of the barrel of music, is the music that you pick if you want to make a joke or something. And just on musical terms, put the anti-immigration stuff aside, but how come humans have been, at least in this country, conditioned to think of this a certain way? So I thought, man, what if you just took this music and played it like a rock band? Just rev it up, use the chords, use the same melodies, but play it as a rock band. And then what if you took other music and turned it into polkas? So these both things started working. So that's why the band came together, not because we had any particular, like we don't have any background in any of our cultural backgrounds that would make us all passionate about, hey, stop saying that about Polish people or Czech people or German, whatever.
Right.
We didn't have any of that. It was purely musical. So that's the core of Brave Combo right there, is can you come and listen to music without prejudice and just base it on that moment right there in that time, as if you were born at that moment and were done, you die. That period of time. Can you allow yourself to be free in that moment and just listen to the music? And so when we did this, things just immediately happened. And suddenly we find ourselves everywhere. And we hit lots of nerves, and we weren't prepared for it, but that was in 1979, and it just swirled and swirled. And we've been on The Simpsons. We have 2 Grammys. Bob Dylan has covered our music. I could go on and on with this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying this is where this has led me. I didn't pursue any of this. I had no idea any of this was going to happen. And then along the way, I knew some people in Fort Worth, and some people in Fort Worth were fans of Brave Combo. Daniel Kokenauer and Barry Watson. Man, I think we played a party for the Kokenauers a long time ago. And I've just known Barry, and Barry's been around. In fact, I played a party for Barry for his birthday 3 nights ago. And my wife and I are very, very good friends with Barry and his wife, Polly. We see them all the time. But I think Barry just had faith in me, and I don't even remember exactly what happened, but I know that he handed me Dragon Ball and said, we need English lyrics, and we need all re-recorded, and we need people to sing this stuff. And then for some reason, I thought I could do it.
In 2001, Funimation gave the original Dragon Ball another shot, airing it on Cartoon Network, and they put Carl in charge of adapting the theme. Prolific Texas session musician Jimmy Tunnell laid down the layered harmonies, and he absolutely nailed it. I love the sound of his voice on this track. Dude's worked with Carly Simon, Laurie Anderson, the Bee Gees, everyone. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the end theme, I'll Give You Romance, sung sweetly by Daphne Gear, the original English voice of Marin, as well as Saki from Fruits Basket, for which she also sang a beautiful song.
One more word and you'll all get with electric shocks.
I had a friend who was friends with Chris Sabat, and we were all hanging out, and there was a cat. I don't know if it was Chris's cat. I don't know if it was a roommate's cat, but I just started following this cat around the house because it was really cute, and I was talking to it, and then, the next thing I knew, Chris appeared in the doorway and said, you have to come into the studio and do that for me.
You're so silly. Here.
Yeah. Though Gear didn't have voice acting experience, she was a singer, being part of a duo called Merkova with her ex-husband in the 2000s.
They knew I sing. It was no secret that Daphne loved to sing.
So Did you have to go through an audition? Or?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so.
Gear mentions in this interview with Derek Padula that this outro had a quick turnaround time, something that Carl corroborated in my talk with him.
We would go in one day or two at the most and do all the background tracks. Then we would go in a day and do the vocals and overdubs, and then we would go in a day and mix. So, I mean, we could turn it around in a week.
Finch would end up working with Funimation for several more years on a number of shows, including Yu Yu Hakusho, Case Closed, and a number of others. One interesting thing I realized when talking to Carl is that he was not provided with the original instrumentals, so he worked with jazz pianist and arranger Lee Tomboulian, who was also gracious enough to chat with me, to recreate them.
My name is Lee Tomboulian, and I am a composer, pianist, accordionist, singer, educator also. I taught at Lawrence University for 6 years, and I taught in lots of different colleges in Texas. I've done a lot of, at this point, quite a lot of vocal arranging. I had a group called Unacquired Taste that came into being in New York after Trump was elected the first time, and my friend Mary Foster Conklin and I decided there needed to be a choir to sing Frank Zappa music.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a logical train of thought.
Right? Idiot Bastard's Son came to mind, and Who Are the Brain Police. Currently conducting an amateur vocal group that's been in business for 30 years. It's called Uncommon Chord. I've been a big fan of Brazilian and Uruguayan music for a long time, so I have a band called Circo that has been together for 25 years or something like that. That's kind of what I'm looking for, is a challenge. Try to see what I can do in a given genre or whatever, without being superficial about it, if possible. Just kind of come from an honest place, but within a certain genre.
How did you initially meet Carl?
I was actually friends in Arkansas with Jeffrey Barnes. Oh boy, I was in Austin in 1980 or so for a while, because my girlfriend at the time kind of dragged me down there, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I do need to get out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. So joined a band that was kind of a cult.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, the gentleman's name, I hope I don't get him in trouble here, but his name is Wolf. That's not his real name. Wolf Flow. You'll notice it's the same backwards and forwards.
Ah, yeah, very clever.
Yeah, he said he was 7 years old, but he was, probably 45 or something. Eventually, after a couple of months, I went, I have to get out of here. Because literally, it was like the Captain Beefheart Trout Mask replica house. It was like that. If you said you wanted to leave, Wolf would talk to you until 4:00 in the morning, until you finally went,
never mind. Yeah.
Never mind. Jeffrey gave me a place to stay for a while, and I found a roommate and blah, blah, blah. But I finally went back to Arkansas, but it was quite a thing. And then, when I was living with Jeffrey, he played me an album of Brave Combo. I think it was Music for Squares. And he said, we both loved it. And he said, I would really love to play with the band. I was still in Arkansas trying to finish my degree. I heard that Brave Combo was playing at the Speakeasy. Man, I have to write a paper tonight. I don't want to, but I'll just drive past the club.
Yeah.
Right. Just to see what's going on.
Just a peek.
Just a peek. And just at that moment, Carl, he had his hair up like this, with a little thing, and it was like sticking up like that. And Jeffrey had a jester's cap, and they were walking through the parking lot. Jeffrey was playing soprano sax. And Carl had his accordion, and they were going, it was fascination, I know. And I turned the car in, and I said, I've got to see it. Anyway, they go back I follow them back into the club, and Baba Hernandez and Mitch Marine are going, ay, 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 ay. Like literally all of this is going on at once. I was like, this is the shit right here. This is it. And Jeffrey was in the band. He was in the band. He achieved his goal,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And Yeah, and that's how I met Carl.
Because of his friendship with Carl, Lee was asked to re-record the instrumental tracks for a number of Funimation openings for which the original wasn't available.
Oh, Carl got the gig, and basically he gave us, back then it was cassettes, and we basically wrote down what we were hearing, the various parts, and just went into the studio the next week or whatever and just did it,
You mentioned a drummer as well?
Yeah, the great Rob Efsharian. Rob played down the drums and I played a bass part on the synth, and then there were, electric keyboard. There was an electric keyboard layer, electric piano sound or whatever, and there might be some organ, and there might be a synth lead, or, sometimes there were, later on they were going to put vocals on, so we couldn't make it too busy. And that's kind of how it seems to work in a lot of these situations. There's a job that needs to be done, and they call, if you're lucky enough to be called, you go and do it. And, we kind of knocked out, I don't remember how many of those in one day. I think we did maybe had 2 days in the studio to knock out a bunch of themes first. It's mostly themes. And they were supposed to be exactly as much like their Japanese counterparts as possible, So we did our best, but, it's always going to be different.
As far as like replicating the sound of the originals, do you remember any particular challenges, say either with the feel of the music or replicating a particular sound of an instrument or anything like that?
I didn't really have the right oinky sound for the bass that they tended to prefer.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It tended to be a little more dry, a little bit more slap bass than the Stevie Wonder oink they were going for, I think.
Oh, yeah, sure.
The themes for the anime are very busy. I mean, they're fast and they're in your face and so you're like, well, I'd like a little more breathing room, but that's not the job.
Right.
I was never in on the vocal sessions, and, it wasn't my session. And it's kind of like when you get done, you just get your stuff out of there and you go on to the next thing, basically.
Right. If you listen closely to some of them, you can tell, but I didn't catch it until it was pointed out to me. Carl got to record keyboard, guitar, and accordion parts for the songs, but he stresses that his main job was rewriting the lyrics, working with singers, and producing the final product. It was very much a collaborative effort, and Lee took charge with recreating the original tracks, which they took great care to do as faithfully as possible. It is here that I need to step back from being the objective arbiter of truth to instead go full fangirl and gush about some of my favorite work Finch did for Funimation. These next few openings are all him unless stated otherwise. Some of Carl's best-known work was for the English dub of Yu Yu Hakusho, which beautifully adapts the Japanese lyrics into a cohesive and evocative bit of English poetry. The first verse of the opening, Smile Bomb, roughly translated from the original Japanese by the Cantopia blog, is something like, brushing against the shoulders of people in the city. I'm alone. The wind sweeping across the endless grass fields. I'm alone. I wonder which of the two is the place I'd want to cry. Drawing 2 circles, I feel a little grown up. The imagery is extremely vivid, intricately developing a strong vibe, but when rendered in English, it doesn't neatly match the melody at all. Forget not rhyming, there are simply too many syllables. So, how might someone adapt this in a way that makes musical sense without losing the meaning and feeling of the original?
Running in a crowd in a faceless town, I need to feel the touch of a friend. In the countryside, I wander far and wide, the isolation gets me again. I don't know where to go when I feel like crying. Oh my, it's time to open myself, do something new. I wanna stop and grow up a bit.
Gone are the specific mentions of brushing up against the shoulders of strangers and being alone, but notice that we're running in a crowd of a faceless town and the isolation's getting us again. It's not one-to-one, but the meaning is firmly intact. This is a large part of what I admire about Finch's work. Being able to write something this strong, this close to the Japanese in such a short span of time is wildly impressive. This is accentuated by the great vocal, performed by the ever-elusive Sarah White.
I asked a friend in Denton who taught voice at a university here if she had any singers that might have this, and she recommended Sarah. And Sarah came in. I met her a day before. We got it together, went in the studio. She nailed it. Then she disappeared. And And then the big question, the thing I get asked more than anything else is, where is Sarah White?
That's funny because I think I have some variation of this on here.
and please let anyone know, I've tried to find her. I have tried. If anybody finds me, I'm telling you, 90% of the time, that's what they're desperate to find out. Where did Sarah White go? Well, what's really funny is that she has no idea, maybe, that she's kind of underground star that a lot of people are, and she may have no idea.
As far as I can tell, White goes uncredited in the show proper, but many learned of her identity through this ancient forum post from Carl himself. Her take is a bit sweeter and more nostalgic than the stadium-ready belt of the original vocalist, Matsuko Mowatari, though no less strong or befitting of the piece. If anything, it helps to give the English rendition its own candor. The instrumental, while very close, also seems to emphasize the slap bass, something that you'll never hear me complain about. White also sang a few of the show's end themes, like Homework Never Ends and the excellent Daydream Generation, with voice actor Jerry Jewell taking the lead and harmonizing with himself on Doing Unbalanced Kiss and The Sun Will Shine Again. My favorite of the show's songs, though, is the second ending theme, Sayonara Bye Bye, sung by voice actress Stephanie Nadolny. Carl noted when we talked that it was of the utmost importance when adapting these songs to preserve the melody, and that any little tweaks were likely done by the vocalist, so I'm crediting Stephanie with this little offset.
Sayonara bye bye. Sayonara bye bye.
The lyrics are maybe even better than the ones done for Smile Bomb. The gently crossing wind is kind to this would-be cut-up heart. The twilight always covers and melts our grasping hands becomes, I feel my aching heart about to break. The gentle wind that blows fills the air with peacefulness. We're standing face to face, hand in hand, and then the evening twilight drapes its arms around us and it melts away. Like Smile Bomb, it's the same imagery revitalized and given new life. There's also an alternate version recorded by Jessica Dismuke, the voice of Yukina, available as a bonus feature on the Movies DVD. This version actually draws to a proper conclusion instead of fading out, although there's not much more of it than you'd hear on TV. Because of the licensing agreements as well as the strict time schedule, Finch and crew only recorded the TV-sized versions of each song, not the full versions you'd find on singles or soundtrack albums. Nadolny also sings the excellent Kitty Grade opening, as well as being credited for lyrics alongside Finch, but she and Jerry Jewell are far from the only voice actors to get involved. Take, for example, Fruits Basket, the old one. I don't believe Finch is credited, but he confirmed to me via email that he worked on the show's music. The opening, in particular, for Fruits Basket, has some of my favorite lyrics he ever adapted, paired with a lush, warm, keyboard-led instrumental, and a solid vocal courtesy of Meredith McCoy, the voice of Kagura. Although the scars of yesterday remain, you can go on living as much as your heart believes. You can't be born again, although you can change. Let's stay together always. The ending is similar comfort food, sung by Laura Bailey, voice of Toru, the shoujo protagonist most likely to be voted too good for this world in high school. The original Japanese version, performed by Ritsuko Okazaki, is already rather lush, but Toru singing it? Part of this is because Fruits Basket is one of the first anime I ever fell in love with, but it's the atmosphere of a sweet dream made manifest. One can't help but feel completely at peace when they hear it.
Take it in love, the sweet love and life. Do, 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 do. La, do, do, do.
Blue Gender has another really good opening, a little more of a rock tune with a powerful vocal from Brandy Evans McComb. According to a YouTube comment she left on an upload of the song, she had been touring with a band called Vince Vance and the Valiants, a group Nadolny also sung with. Looking into that discography has been
Mariah Carey's hit All I Want for Christmas Is You has become a holiday season staple and it has been for decades, but local singer Vince Vance says she ripped off his Christmas hit.
All the girls in the world should be seen on Halloween. Some dress up, some dress down, just in their bikinis. Upstairs maids, sailor babes, and I dream of Jeannie, gangster mall, Barbie doll. Oh, I love my Halloweeny!
Interesting, to say the least. What's important for the purposes of this video is that through the Nadolny connection, Brandy got the job, and according to her, she received a one-time payment and was not credited in the show itself, which led to confusion amongst fans over who sang the song. Given that Finch himself was uncredited in Fruits Basket, it seems like things were a bit loose in those days, unfortunately. Through accounts with others involved, including one person I spoke to who wished to remain anonymous, the one-time payment and slightly ramshackle nature of the company doesn't seem unusual.
I've interviewed Chris
Chris and many other people at Funimation, and they said they were just trying to get it done. They were trying to get an episode out as quick as they could because they had so many to record.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Mike McFarland, a prolific voice actor and ADR director in his own right, also did lyric adaptation for a good amount of Funimation stuff, so I wanted to take a moment to highlight his work.
Whoa, wait, baby, baby, low tension now, baby.
Back on the list of songs John loves from mid-shows, we have the messiest soap opera I've ever seen, Peach Girl. Woohoo. This show's cataclysmic degree of gas-bossed girl lighting with flames visible from outer space isn't particularly on display in the delightful pop rock opening theme. McFarlane's rendition, sung by Kim Whalen, captures the innocence and summery fun of the original perfectly, delighting the Beach Boys loving part of my heart. The imagery is immaculate. The sound of ocean waves and just your being there makes the world seem to shine isn't complicated, but that's exactly what makes it good, you know? It's evocative. Interestingly, this one seems to have actually had the instrumental track provided, as it's way too close to my ears to have been a recreation. Same deal with the ballad that closes the show, although that one doesn't seem to have a credited vocalist. My other favorite show McFarlane worked on, Suzuka, does seem to have its tunes recreated, although they're extremely close. I've listened to both the Japanese and American versions of the show's music many times. The end theme is what gives it away, lacking the acoustic guitars of the original, as well as noticeably changing up the drum beat on the verse. Take a listen. His lyrics on the opening of this one are downright masterful, giving us what might be my favorite song in this whole video. The lyrics so clearly sound like they're about the titular character, from her perspective, her struggle to be perfect and mask her trauma. This means nothing to anyone watching this video who hasn't seen the show, but it means something to me, damn it! The first end theme, Owie Field, is also a favorite. The lyrics were adapted by Anne Chenoweth Carr, who mostly works as a writer and theater actress. She ended up working with Funimation through McFarland, who gave her a chance to do a bit of script adaptation. To hear her tell it, she didn't click much with Suzuka the show, a little bit too much high school romance melodrama, but the end theme captured her attention and gave her a bit of a hyperfixation. She'd taken some Japanese language courses as well as having done some self-study, and coupled this with peeking at an English translation she'd found online. Over the course of a few days, she found herself singing some of the tune in English, and this inspired her to finish writing the rest of it. She brought her lyrics to Mike McFarland, who made her record a little demo, and the rest is history. Chenoweth Carr's other contribution to the world of dubbed anime openings would, in my mind, be legendary.
Kiss, kiss for love.
Hey, where's all the Tumblrites and Fujos at? Like Finch, Chenoweth Carr does a good job retaining the imagery of the original. Lady, maybe, or host, I find I really don't mind, has always been a favorite line. Some of these aren't as literal, but get the point across while strongly invoking the visual identity of the show. Everyone has their own reason for falling in love, it's different for everyone, becomes the more flowery, if I had to choose a rose in this garden of romance, maybe we could take this chance. It really works for me. Both this tune and the Suzuka ones are enhanced by the vocals of Christine Sa, a Vietnamese-Canadian singer who had also done some anime cover albums around this time. She also provides the voice of the character Nana in Suzuka, who's a pop idol, which is kind of cute.
Her birthday? It's 3 days from today.
As well as singing the One Piece ending, Free Will. We'll talk more about Luffy and the crew later, but first, if you'd indulge me, I want to tell you about another old favorite of mine.
Every day by day, singing love, my sister, in this world where everyone is lonely.
Also known as Mongolian Chop Squad to avoid confusion with The Guy, Beck is an anime about a rock band, which, as you can imagine, entails a lot of music, which Carl again confirmed that he worked on. McFarland is also credited as a music director. The lyric adaptation part was likely a bit easier than usual, as a lot of the show's music was actually already in English, but the grammar touch-ups are appreciated, and some of the new vocal performances really speak to me. The show's main band has some good ones. I'm a big fan of Face, sung by main character Yukio Tanaka, voiced by Gregor Rice. In one of the last few episodes, there's this really climactic scene where the band performs the Beatles song, I've Got a Feeling, starting as a solo acoustic rendition with each member gradually joining to build up the arrangement. The dub, presumably for copyright reasons, presents us with a re-recorded version of the same instrumental, albeit with the lyrics and melodies swapped for 50 Cent Wisdom, another song from the soundtrack. It is at least another song that contains the phrase, I've got a feeling, which I assume is why it was chosen. This makes the person in the crowd recognizing the song as a cover a little silly.
Oh, please believe me, I hate to miss the train. Oh, yeah.
The Beatles were my favorite band when I was younger, so this used to drive me crazy. They should have talked to Sailor Moon's licensing people. They could have given them the McCartney hookup. Some of my favorite songs in the show, though, are the ones done by other fictional bands. There's an episode where Yukio learns about the Rocket Boys, who have a bouncy 60s-sounding ditty called Follow Me. At the end of the episode, we're treated to Yukio performing a duet of the song with Maho, the sister of one of his bandmates, voiced by Brina Palencia.
Follow me, baby, I won't let you leave.
This is my favorite song in the show, and this specific version takes the cake. It's really unfortunate not having a full recording in higher quality. Palencia also does a great version of the show's closing theme, Moon on the Water, another personal favorite. This one's luckily a little more unobstructed. Like Follow Me, the lyrics just needed a little cleaning up, and she gives it her all, capturing the soulful essence of the original Japanese vocal by Sowelu. So, well, ooh, cut that.
Could you kind of explain how you ended up starting to work with Funimation before eventually transitioning into doing ADR?
Sure, yeah. So I was a huge Dragon Ball Z fan, and I had taken a tour of Funimation whenever they were still in the old Frostbank building. And I ended up going to community college when I turned 18, not too far away from there. Let me preface this story by saying you absolutely cannot get into it this way now. People have tried to do it this way, and they will not only be escorted off the premises by security, they will also be blacklisted. Like, this has literally happened, so do not do what I did. Yeah, so what I did was I walked in and I asked how to audition. And I was like, hi, how do I audition for you? And whatever part of the office I ended up opening the door of was all of their cubicles. So I distinctly remember just one head popping up, and it was a woman. I wish I could remember her name. I can't imagine she still works there, but she just said, I don't know, follow me. And then she took me cubicle to cubicle trying to figure out where and how I would audition for them. And eventually they got me the number of the talent coordinator at the time, and I called that number like every week or two until I finally got to do an open call for Case Closed, actually. And I did not get cast initially, but I came fairly close, and from there I started doing a lot of bit parts and Walla, which is like the group scenes that you see when they're walking through a market and you hear the mumbling in the background. That's a group of 3 or 4 actors in a booth just improvising lines together to try to make that ambient sound. So I did that for about 2 years, and then I got my first featured character as Nina Tucker in Full Metal Alchemist.
Let's talk more about Brina, who I had a wonderful conversation with. She was a music major, like me, and she put her degree to work, unlike me, becoming a regular fixture of Funimation's music department.
And after that, Colleen Klinkenbeard kind of took me under her wing for whatever reason. I don't know why. To this day, I don't understand why, but I appreciate it. And she, after we had worked together for maybe a year after that, she had directed me in a couple other things, she asked me if I wanted to ADR direct. And I said yes, and I started out as her assistant, so I just shadowed her as a director, and then I would fill in for her when she needed. And then she hired me full-time as an ADR director. The first show that I was doing full-time I did the last 4 episodes of Moon Phase, and then I can't remember if XXX Holic came before or after. I think that was before School Rumble, but School Rumble was the first show that I actually got to cast and like do the whole series. But it was through School Rumble that I ended up doing music directing, just I guess on accident. I didn't really mean to, but there were a couple songs that we needed to dub, and I could tell that whoever wrote the English lyrics wasn't a musician because it wasn't in rhythm, like it didn't make any sense. And so I just rewrote all of it because I knew that I could, and just did it. And then I just directed it myself because I didn't ask for help because I didn't really feel like I needed it. But apparently that's not the way that you typically do it. And Colleen was like, hey, you can get paid extra for that, right? Like the music directing is a whole other separate thing. And then I think maybe she either told Mike McFarlane to talk to me, or I talked to him, or he approached me. But he at the time kind of the go-to guy for music directing and lyric adaptation. And he was pretty overwhelmed because he was producing and directing at the time. So he just had a lot of work and he needed help. And so he asked me to do some stuff. I think Negama was the first thing, and I did well enough that he was like, you just do this. And he just started sending everyone to me. And then when I quit ADR directing full-time, I moved into full-time acting and then doing a lot of the music directing on the side.
This put Palencia in the interesting position of voice acting on several shows she also adapted music for. Probably the best known is One Piece, for which she also voices Chopper. As some of you may know, before One Piece was picked up for American distribution by Funimation in 2007, 104 episodes had previously been dubbed by our old friends at 4Kids. This version was controversial for a few reasons. I'd like to make it clear that some folks from 4Kids, like Matthew Durdick, who scripted for Yu-Gi-Oh! And One Piece, have gone on record saying that a lot of the infamous 4Kids censorship was because of television standards and practices, not because they had a personal vendetta against these shows or Japanese culture or whatever. They were tasked with turning anime into Saturday morning cartoons on a tight schedule, and some things needed to change. Some changes, though, went beyond airbrushing cigarettes and guns.
Yo! Here's how the story goes. We find out by the treasure in the grand line. There's no doubt. The pirate whose eye is on it, he'll sing. I'll be king of the pirates. I'm gonna be king.
Cards on the table. As someone with no emotional attachment to One Piece, I love this. Written and sung by Russ Velasquez with rapping by musician, actor, and visual designer Sean Conrad, this set of absolute bars sent 2000s One Piece fans into a blind fury, simply for not being We Are. Maybe also because it's really silly. But I would have moved mountains to make it to the living room if I'd heard this as a child. Interestingly, the pirate rap didn't seem to be their only option. This footage, allegedly from a trade show, was uploaded to YouTube in 2006 and features a 4Kids version of the show's Japanese theme, We Are. Velasquez has confirmed numerous times that he sang on this version, though he mentioned on 4Kids Flashback that he doesn't have a higher quality recording of it. We don't know for sure why they didn't end up going with this, but John Siegler theorizes that it just didn't have that Saturday morning magic. I mean, One Piece wasn't originally a kid's show, so that's probably not what they were going for. Not only did Funimation's dub retain We Are with a great English translation by Mike McFarland, but the next few openings would also be translated. We Are gives us an interesting chance to see two different English versions of the same song, so we can compare and contrast them. I would say that, but there's actually three. As far as I can tell, when Funimation started dubbing One Piece, it aired on Toonami. From what I can gather, Toonami had started by airing the 4Kids dub and switched to Funimation around episode 144. So there wasn't yet a Funimation version of We Are. They were using the then current openings. But there's one episode where We Are gets used as an insert song, and in that instance, they did actually do like a quick and dirty English translation. This version was adapted by Funimation staffers Jerry Jewell and Justin Cook. Unsurprisingly, the final Funimation version is the most faithful. This dusty treasure map, if we check it, it's not a legend, becoming that legendary place that the end of the map reveals is only legendary till someone proves it real, is a particular favorite moment of mine. We Are is already pretty literal as far as anime openings go, containing the title of the show and describing the plot to the letter, but the earlier Funimation version goes as far as name-dropping Luffy. The 4Kids one also sheds a bit of the imagery, like compasses and treasure maps, in favor of more lyrics about the pirate crew. Things like the compass are only the source of delays becomes the unrelated, gotta find a crew and then I'll work them to the bone, instead of Funimation's more direct, compass left behind, it'll only slow us down. Palencia would work on several more openings for One Piece, including the techno-inspired Believe, with great double-tracked vocals from Meredith McCoy, and the iconic Bon Voyage, which Palencia also provides vocals for. She nails this big octave jump at the end. I really love her voice.
A glimpse of the sun rising on our tomorrow.
Unfortunately, that would be the final One Piece opening to receive an official translation, with Season 4 Voyage 1's DVD including a disclaimer explaining that there was a rights issue. They say they want to get back to the tradition of dubbing openings, but that never happens. My friend A2 Adam, who's a lot more knowledgeable about the funny pirate show than I am, also talked to Brina on their podcast, in which she relays this fun anecdote.
I do remember after I had done a few of them, they started to get so easy to me because all of them had the same theme of sailing and friendship, going out to sea adventure. So
Right.
I went from an adaptation taking me several hours, sometimes like a couple days, to I remember one of them only took me 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So fast. And I was like, damn, I think I'm getting this down. But then they stopped dubbing them, so it didn't matter anymore.
All right, that was a popular show. Now back to obscure things that I like. School Rumble's openings are left in Japanese, but Palencia, in addition to voicing Mikoto, did get to adapt a few insert songs as well as one of the end themes. In this scene, Haruma, my son, is trying to confess his love to his high school flame, Tenma, on the train. Neither of them are very smart.
Tenma, I wanted to...
Every time I see you smile, my heart is slowly breaking.
I think I actually might have cried laughing the first time I saw this. This version is sung by Brina, but there is a version in one of the OVAs that's credited to Haruma himself. Brina confirmed to me via email that it is sung by Chris Sabat rather than Brandon Potter, Haruma's usual voice actor.
If I ever forget you, I'm sorry. And if I ever forget you, I'm sorry too. But I will try to remember you.
Remember the Fruits Basket ending I brought up earlier? The auditory equivalent of a soft blanket on a cozy afternoon? This comfy vibe is rivaled only by this Scrumble end theme, sung in character by Tenma and her sister Yakumo, voiced by Lucy Christian and Caitlin Glass, respectively. Not only do the vocal performances capture their personalities perfectly, with Tenma sounding upbeat, spirited, and staccato, while Yakumo is gentle, slight, and legato, but the layered harmonies, mostly extra Caitlin Glass, paired with the lush, fun instrumental, never fail to put me in a good mood. I tried to work out the arrangement for this once, and there's really a lot going on. Thank God for Guitar Pro. Thank God for MIDI horns. Thank God for... Oh, Starry Skylighter is another really sweet tune. This isn't School Rumble, though. What's this from? Okay, so Negima is this criminally insane show based on a manga by the dude who wrote Love Hina. It follows Negi Springfield, a 10-year-old mage in training from Wales. I'm from Wales! I can't do it anymore. Puberty fucking ruined my ability to do the voice. God damn it. For some reason, to complete his wizardly training, he becomes the teacher for an all-girls middle school in Japan, and it's a harem anime. I sure did watch all of this in high school. I once had a Twitter exchange with an acquaintance about how one of the characters in Negima was her lesbian awakening, and we both got really excited finding another person who'd seen the show before she pointed out how weird the premise was, and the conversation basically ended there. The manga apparently turns into some type of cool action shonen thing. Haven't read it. Anyways, what you gotta know is that Negima got adapted into an anime by Studio Zepic in 2005. It looked like this, and then Studio Shaft made their own unrelated version the following year, with blackjack and hookers. Funimation dubbed both, and the Shaft adaptation, billed in America as the second season, had a lot of its music adapted by Palencia. Starry Skylighter is one of the beautiful end themes. I was using it as like a segue. It was a segue. It was funny. You laughed. It was good. The cadence of actress Kate Bristol paired with Palencia's innocent and beautifully adapted lyrics are really great. Sounds like they finally got a hold of the original instrumentals to work with too. Probably had to figure out that harmony by themselves though.
You also mentioned you don't generally get sheet music to work with.
Almost never. I can think of one time, and it was Space Dandy, and it was in the wrong key. It was in, I guess it was in like, I don't know. I don't know why it was in a totally different key than what actually ended up in the show. But it was still helpful because it's easy to like implement that into Sibelius and then just change the key in Sibelius. There are some lyric adapters that do not that don't provide any sort of sheet music. You just have to learn it by ear. Some singers prefer that because they can't read music. But I try to always have the sheet music. Which I didn't always. In the early days, I didn't do it that way because I don't know why. I think just because that had never been established. Like, I remember what it was. I noticed some of the singers that we would have would bring in their own sheet music because they said it helped them learn better. And I was like, oh, well, I can just do that for you. I don't want you to have to like write out your own sheet music. Like that sounds like something that should be a me job and not a you job. I
mean, I've tried covering some of those songs. The hardest part for me is always figuring out the harmony, which is something you mentioned. That's my favorite part. Every song that I've ever adapted, I also had to sing because I do the scratch track for it so that the singer can learn it. And I do every single part because I want to know backwards and forwards what the song is if I am directing them. And I also, especially if I'm not directing them, because I don't always trust other music directors, I want to make sure that they have every single thing that it could possibly be
just so nothing is missed or misinterpreted.
Unusually for a 26-episode show, Negima actually has a few different end themes. Sorry, the first season is Negima, exclamation point. The second season, the Shaft version, is Negima, exclamation point, question mark. You know, a couple anime do stuff like that, so I guess it's actually Negima? What the fuck? Love Sensation is a rare example of Funimation taking a fun liberty. The original is sung by 3 voice actresses in character, those being principal cast members Negi, Asuna, and Konica. The dubbed version, instead, is sung by Laura Bailey, in character as her characters Ayaka and Evangeline. Ayaka even calls out Evangeline by name at one point.
Yes, I know that it's strange. I can't help my obsession for hands off, Ava.
Honestly, I love it. This version's really fun. Not only does it demonstrate Bailey's range, neither character is quite as innocuous as Toru Fruits Basket, but Negima loves to do stuff like this with its other songs. Sorry, I did it again. But Negima loves to do stuff like this with its other songs, so it completely fits here. For example, the show's most used end theme, Aliyah, goes through 10 different versions in the original Japanese, all sung by different combinations of characters. This is a super novel idea. It means that my fave trio gets a version, but if your favorite character is the martial artist, ninja, priestess, e-girl, vampire, robot, or ghost, you're also covered. Show's pretty fun, actually. Funimation didn't get quite that ambitious, opting only for one version, a duet between Caitlin Glass and Jeremy Lee. Both are multi-tracked, and I can't help but hear Glass's backing vocals as an extension of Yakumo from School Rumble. The real star of this show, though, is the opening, 1000% Sparking. Like Aliyah, there are many Japanese versions featuring several student combos. In English, we get one, an amazing duet between Palencia and Leah Clark, one of my favorite songs in the video. The way their voices complement each other is nothing short of stunning, and Palencia's belt especially sounds great. It's funny, when I was younger, I was used to her playing characters like Yue from this, or Honoka from Suzuka, quieter or more nasally. Then hearing her buzz this out blew my mind. The show pulls a weird stunt in later episodes where they open with a different part of the song, this weird spoken word verse. So we actually have a full English version included as a bonus feature on the long out of print DVD. Not sure if the later Sentai Filmworks Blu-ray got it, but I think that's out of print now too. Media preservation? I don't know her. We talked lyric adaptation earlier, but I think Negima especially helps showcase the amount of talent the company seemed to be overflowing with in the 2000s. Not only did you have people like Carl Finch, Sarah White, or Christine Sa, for whom anime was but a blip on their life's radar, but a lot of the voice talent who made these dubs what they were are great singers in their own right, and I'm really happy we have so many recordings that showcase that. Not only are they simply good performances of good songs, but you get the sense they had fun recording them. You get to hear talented people harmonizing with each other on material they'd never have gotten to touch if not for all the universe's puzzle pieces falling in exactly the right way. While these songs and shows are, in many ways, just one star in the vast universe of time, they exist forever in the memories of many, and a lot of these folks still make their living working on anime. Finch described Funimation as a fun place to work, and I got that vibe from Palencia too, especially in regards to how she would manage music there. She took her job seriously while also making sure the working environment for her singers was a comfortable one.
Well, a lot of times I'll be working with people who aren't actually singers, and so in the booth there's a lot of actual pedagogy that has to happen. There's a lot of sort of teaching singing technique as we're going along. Because the other thing that I also want to do with my singers when I'm directing them is I'm very cognizant of vocal health. I don't want anything that we're singing to mess them up vocally. A big aspect of that is giving them time to prepare. I always fight for my singers to have a long time with the scratch tracks and with the sheet music before they come in. Because sometimes producers, they're just not thinking, they're just thinking about deadlines, and they'll be like, okay, so if you do the lyric adaptation, if this is your deadline for that, then we can bring them in the next day, right? And I'm like, nope, you sure can't. You cannot. And I always, minimum, I will refuse to work on a project if they don't give the singer at least 2 days with the material, at least 2 days. And if they won't give me that, then I'm like, well, then find someone else, because I'm not doing that. I'm kind of brutal when it comes to the music directing. I have very high expectations of how it should be done. And if people aren't going to do it that way, then I'm like, I don't want to be a part of this. because it's going to end up sounding like shit and you're going to hurt somebody. You're going to hurt somebody's voice, and I don't want to be a part of that. If we can have more than that, then awesome. And then I always try to book some padding time in the session so that the singer doesn't feel like they have to rush through things, make them feel like they have time to take breaks, drink water, do all the things, rest their voice in between stuff. Like I want to make it as relaxed as possible, especially for those singers who are not singers, who are mainly actors. The level of vulnerability that people have when they're singing is really intense. I've said this before. I feel like singing is one of the most vulnerable art forms because the instrument is your actual body, and you carry all of your trauma, all of your past stories, everything about you is stored in your body. And when you sing, any tension in your body, you can hear it in your voice. So for you to sing is to lay all of those burdens bare. It's for you, it's throwing your entire being out into the universe. So it's really freaking scary for people who are not used to doing it. And it's scary even for people who are used to doing it. I've had people cry in the booth, not because of anything I did, but just because they feel so vulnerable in the moment, and they feel so scared because a lot of people have trauma around singing as well. Like people telling them that they can't sing, that they sound like a dying dog, and like all these kinds of things. So there's all this childhood trauma that comes up in the booth. So I want to do everything I can to make them as comfortable as possible, feel as prepared as possible, because like I said, you can hear any tension that's in the voice, and that doesn't make for good singing. You know, you got to be comfortable. You have to be loose in order to get the best performance. So that's why I'm so hardcore about it. Yeah. What's funny too, that I learned about character voices over time. I started becoming less and less strict about them sounding exactly like their character, particularly if the character needed to be an amazing singer. Like, for example, with Amanda Lee in Zombieland Saga, her character is very mousy. Like her speaking voice is very mousy, very quiet. And at first, she was sort of trying to do the songs that way. And I was like, I don't think it works. I think she has to have two different voices. I think she has to, like, all of her solos, her character's solos have to hit so hard, and just really be felt in the soul, that I just let it. I was like, don't even try to sound like your character. Sound like the amazing singer that you are, and just embrace that. I know a ton of singers who sound nothing like themselves whenever they sing. Like, their natural singing voice is nothing like their natural speaking voice. And so I kind of have embraced that a little bit more over the years. Now, with somebody like Chopper, that's a little different. Like, if it's that distinct, then you gotta really kind of commit to that. But, like, you know, especially when it's just like if it's not a creature and it's an actual human person, I think you can get away with less charactery sound whenever they sing.
Palencia continued to work on music for Funimation into the 2010s, being involved with shows like Rosario Vampire, Haganai, and Space Dandy. Notably, these all adapted insert songs rather than their opening or ending themes. This could be conjecture, but it feels like we've gradually reached the point where most anime that get translated music these days are either wildly popular stuff like Dragon Ball, which Palencia has also been working on, or stuff that directly has music as some sort of plot point. For example, some of the other shows Palencia worked on around this time include Fuka, which is actually set in the same universe as Suzuka, Show by Rock, and my personal favorite, the excellent Zombieland Saga, which may be one of the most extensive musical projects she's worked on since Beck or Negima. Not only did she adapt the high-energy opening and the beautiful harmony-packed ending, but all the show's songs, down to the ridiculous rap battle and an 18-second commercial jingle for a yakitori restaurant. It's great stuff. Palencia voices main girl Sakura, with the rest of the principal cast also consisting of great singers like Caitlin Glass, Stephanie Young, and Dawn Bennett. Actually, let's talk about Dawn Bennett. She was one of the names that came came up when I asked Palencia if there were any other folks who knew this world like her. Bennett started doing adaptation work in the 2010s as Palencia stepped away a bit. Not only did the two work together on Zombieland Saga and Show by Rock, but Bennett also did Kimono Friends, Pop Team Epic, the Sakura Wars anime, and, of particular interest to me, some of Discotech's recent dubs of older shows like Lovely Complex, Re Cutie Honey, and Gunbuster. These Discotech dubs are produced at Sound Cadence Studios, which has primarily done work for Funimation and now Crunchyroll. I can't speak to the other two, I haven't seen them, but in the case of Re Cutie Honey, the dubbed music in question is a scene where this villain, Scarlet Claw, sings Cutie Honey's theme song to mock her.
She's a stupid lady who's been pissing me off. Just a nosy Nancy that I can't get rid of.
Shout out to Discotech. Discotech's pretty cool. Also shout out to Re Cutie Honey. Another big name from the last few years is Megan Shipman.
Papa, I want a pistol with a silencer.
Sure, if there's one on sale.
She also worked on Show by Rock and Zombieland Saga, as well as stuff like Quintessential Quintuplets and even One Piece. With Crunchyroll's acquisition of Funimation in 2024, it's nice knowing the music department is still in good hands. One project where we get to hear Shipman and Palencia working together is the 2021 film Sing a Bit of Harmony, for which Palencia adapted the music while Shipman voiced lead character Shion. Shion is an AI high school girl that the other students become attached to, treating like a real person. This came out like a year before the first public version of ChatGPT. And this movie to the list of things Gen AI is kinda ruined. But I still had fun with it. It's well animated and Shion is constantly singing. For a robot, Shipman manages to give her lots of personality. I especially like this one where she helps train a judo student in the form of a dance. But despite my praise, it does kind of feel like less anime music is being adapted than ever. First, let's talk a bit about simuldubbing. That's the practice of anime being dubbed and released internationally during the same season as its original Japanese release, necessitating a quick turnaround. Justin Savakis of Anime News Network gives a good rundown of how these work.
With the simuldub, the first materials, including the show script and a rough version of the animation with recorded Japanese voices, possibly unmixed, come in a couple of weeks before the show airs. Early on in a season, they get it earlier, but if a show's production gets delayed later in the season, it might be much closer to air. A translator gets on the episode immediately and pounds out an annotated translation with notes for the writing team about style, formality, and cultural or lingual notes they'll need to adapt things like puns. Then that script goes to a time coder, who stamps time codes not just on every line of dialogue, but every grunt, reaction, and vocal tick that happens in a show. It then goes to the writing staff for script adaptation. The recording can't begin until Funimation gets the final animation from Japan. If you record against early versions, last-minute animation tweaks, often to match the Japanese voices, can completely throw off the lip flap of the dub. But once recording is underway, things work just like a normal dub. Every individual actor records their roles one line at a time in a small booth directly into a Pro Tools workstation. Funimation has quite a few studios running simultaneously, with different directors and engineers in each one, sometimes working on recording different parts on the same shows. Creative casting choices allow many of the same core voice actors to flow from studio to studio and from show to show, knocking off multiple roles each week. There's just not enough time to fix things before they go up. At the end of all this craziness, the episode is mixed, approved, and someone in Funimation's video department has to sync everything up with the final delivered video from Japan. Export it in the myriad of formats required for VRV, Hulu, and whoever else they're working with. Watch everything through to be safe and upload them. And I'm sure every week the staff holds their breath and waits for the inevitable fan feedback. With any luck, they haven't broken out the pitchforks.
Naturally, I would assume that this leaves little time for things like music adaptation, even if the studio could get all the materials required to do so. Shows with simuldubs do tend to get updated for their home media releases though. Take Fuka for example. Its initial release largely leaves the music untranslated, while the DVD and Blu-ray give us nice English versions. Zombieland Saga's first season did get all its songs dubbed for Blu-ray, but in a move that baffled fans, subsequent seasons lack dubbed music. Some theorize that this was, in some way, Crunchyroll's fault. A lot of folks have been upset about the merger, pointing to things Funimation previously did well seemingly falling by the wayside. I've had my share of issues with Crunchyroll, which are perhaps worth taking a look at some other time, but I don't necessarily think this is an example of corporate cheaping out. While we weren't talking about Zombieland Saga specifically, Palencia did mention that one possible reason for there being less dubbed music in the last few years is that, due to anime's increased global reach, the musicians involved in the original may want their material to be heard unaltered internationally. internationally. Additionally, she mentioned that the Japanese rights holders for the music are generally more hands-on with dubs now. It's possible Funimation's acquisition somehow shook up the music production process, but it could also be possible that the Japanese rights holders just changed their minds. Wouldn't necessarily be the first time. This reminds me of an interesting problem Dragon Ball Super ran into. When the show initially aired on Toonami in America, its opening remained undubbed, while the first ending theme alternated between two different English versions and the original Japanese. When Chris Sabat was asked about this on Twitter, he simply replied, "We are trying, it's complicated." While the end theme, Hello Hello Hello, was performed by heavy metal singer Jonathan Young, the opening, Josetsu Dynamic, is performed by Kazuya Yoshi in both Japanese and English, so maybe that was the holdup. The later end themes, mostly adapted by Palencia, feature a variety of talent from a younger generation of anime fans, some of whom you may recognize, like Danny Artaud, Nathan Sharp, and Professor Shy Guy. Sort of feels like a passing of the torch moment. It's cool. While the practice of creating new openings or translating existing ones isn't as prevalent as it used to be, legacy shows like Pokémon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and yes, even Dragon Ball have been keeping the tradition alive, with remarkable talent doing the same great work that I've outlined in this video. One of the coolest things to see after the dust is settled is how many of these localized tunes have taken on lives of their own and how their fans have kept their memories alive. Say what you will about Jason Page, and part of me really wants to, but it's undeniable that he can still command a room with that original Pokémon theme. Although, funnily enough, whenever that song is performed live, whether it be by Page, the Pokémon Symphony, or a dive bar cover band, the crowd seems to mumble their way through verse 2, because that part wasn't on TV. Bunch of fake fans. Aside from Page, it's been fun to see some of the other people behind these tunes revisit them too. The folks from Johto sang the funny do-do-do-do-do song again a few years ago. Sean Fresco recorded an updated One Piece rap with lines about characters like Robin, who weren't repped in the original, and Lucas Rossi, the singer behind the original Beyblade song, a song I didn't even get to talk about in this video, did his own version of that as well. One of my favorite things to discover while working on this project has been the staggering amount of quality fan covers. I'll include some of my faves in a companion playlist, but I want to give special attention to Nikki G, whose Sayonara Bye Bye cover has been in constant rotation for me over the last year, and Amelie, who's gone on to be an accomplished voice actress in her own right, showing up to voice and vocalize in a few of the series listed, notably One Piece and Zombieland Saga. Seeing some folks cover the full versions of these songs, going so far as to finish the English lyrics, is really cool, especially with how seamless some of them feel. If I hadn't been researching the production of these damn things for as long as I have, you could convince me that Nikki's Sayonara Bye Bye lyrics had been directly adapted by an official source at the same time as the rest of it. It's cool to consider that, while there was of course passion involved, these tunes were a job for a lot of the people who worked on them, but they went on to impact fans on a level deep enough to make them their own. I also want to take an extra moment to highlight how far the people involved in creating these extend beyond just that person who did that anime song. I mentioned Jenna Grama's long career outside music, but talking to Brina and Carl, they also mentioned some of their other projects they wanted me to highlight. During the conversation I had with Carl, he talked a bit about the idea of music for music's sake. That is, the idea that music on its own is worthwhile, so long as it sounds cool, regardless of where it comes from or what it's about. It was pretty interesting how he talked about polka's history as sort of a maligned genre and how the Brave Combo sought to sort of recontextualize that, but he also recorded a medley of Protestant hymns with Daphne Gear, despite not being particularly religious himself. I recommend it, if only to open your ears to something very different from what we've talked about today. Brina Palencia, of course, has done lots of work on anime, but she's also released some original music in the last few years that I'm a really big fan of. She didn't tell me to mention it, but it's really good and I want you to hear it. Go hear it, or I'll cry. Particular recommendations to Cigarette and Bliss. Hey, it's me, your good buddy Editing John. While I was editing this, she put out an album. She put out a whole album. You should go listen to the album. Go listen to the album. She also does a podcast called But I'm Spiritual, where she and her friend Artist delve into their and their guests' spiritual but not necessarily religious journeys. The story of dubbed anime openings is the story of dubbed anime itself, a story of how Japanese animation in foreign countries grew from a niche curiosity into the mainstream. It is kinda sad that not as many shows receive these openings anymore, but it's also kinda cool to think that Western audiences are more willing to appreciate music in its original Japanese. Nevertheless, these songs became a part of these shows' identities for lots of people. Friend of the channel Pat Mac made this point in regard to European dub openings, but just think, could you imagine imagine Pokemon without that iconic rock tune? Sonic X if he didn't have to go fast? DBZ without Rock the Dragon? The work done on these shows, for better or worse, shaped the way that they will forever be perceived in America and numerous other countries. In the case of Pokemon especially, the English tune might be more beloved internationally than the original aim to be a Pokemon master. And I think that extra bit of variance, in many ways, has made the world a more interesting and rich place. For that, I'm forever grateful. I'm Jonii, and I gotta go track down this obscure promo CD with all the 4Kids openings on it for karaoke. Peace. Oh my god, thanks so much for watching that nightmare of a video to work on. Huge thank you to the folks on the screen for their help. Special thanks to A2Adam and DrawnByAJ, who really did a lot to help this video come along. And of course, thanks to Carl Finch, Lee Tombulian, and Brina Palencia for their time. It is an invaluable resource to actually get to talk to them. I'm really tired of working on this, so I'm just gonna do this Patreon read really quick, but I want to say thank you to everyone who's ever donated to the Patreon. Even if you're not a current member, I do genuinely really appreciate it. This video has taken so long, so I would really like to thank all of you who even, made it to this point and are still watching. That alone means a lot. Anyways, the $5 patrons: Bowties and Glasses, Cowboys in the Hood, Ninjastar Compass, Jakey97, DrawnByAJ, Gritzbot, Lapouris, and LilOrangeFella. I've also made a playlist of a bunch of the openings in question, alongside some interviews and other videos I used as sources, and other videos you might like if you like this one. I am going to try to get the interviews I did in full up on the Patreon as soon as I can, and later on I'll probably release them on the second channel as well, but no concrete dates on that yet. I'm Jonii, and I've been very tired. Peace.
And then, when they brought it back as the final chapters, instead of just dubbing the original opening like they did with Kai, Funimation made their own original song, which sucks because Kuzensetsu Go is like the best fucking song I've ever...
Quick question, when does Launch show up again?
She doesn't.
No!